The biggest pricing mistake isn't that you're charging too little, it's that you're pricing the wrong thing entirely. So you raise your prices, maybe a few clients pay, but the work stays the same, the stress stays the same, and 6 months later, you're right back here thinking about raising them again. Because the problem was never your prices, it was what you were actually pricing. Many think about pricing from this place of entitlement. Our costs have gone up, so we're increasing our rates. Or worse, I've been doing this for 15 years, I deserve to charge more. And that's not how your client thinks, is it? And honestly, that's not how you'd think if you were hiring someone either. Would you rather pay your team more because their rent went up, or would you rather pay them more because they were actually driving more impact to your company? Well, the same logic applies to you. When you price based on activity, hours, deliverables, you're saying, pay me for what I do. And when clients hear that, they treat you like a vendor. They pick and choose from your menu. They negotiate, and they also compare you to the cheaper options. And then you end up constantly justifying your value. So let me show you how this actually works. There are 4 tiers in how clients perceive you. At tier 4, you're cheap hands, staff augmentation. We're just going to take this off your plate for you. And it's commoditized, it's easily replaceable, and with AI, this is just getting automated even faster. Tier 3, this is where most service businesses actually live. You're good at what you do, but you're still seen as a service provider. Clients come to you with a task, you do the task, and that's a big part of the relationship. And you may have better ideas, but they oftentimes don't get implemented because of limited budget or no access to the top. Tier 2, this is where things really start to shift. You've got ROI-driven results, you have case studies, and clients know you to deliver, but it's still inconsistent. Sometimes you get the budget you need, and sometimes you don't. And you're still often competing on scope. And you might be giving this great strategy, but oftentimes it's just locked into the existing scope. And the real work that drives results, the strategy, is often underpriced or even included for free. So tier 1 is different. This is where you're seen as a growth partner. You're not just selling a service anymore, you're leading a transformation. Now, clients don't just ask for your menu, they ask for your guidance and they pay accordingly. Now, here's the thing, you might be delivering tier 1 work, but if your positioning looks like tier 3, that's usually how you'll be treated and how you're paid. So let me give you an example. We worked with a CEO. She runs a consulting firm, competes against some of the biggest names in our industry, and they're competing against the kind of firms that have had decades to build their brand. Her company was doing great work and legitimately very innovative in their approach, but they kept getting stuck in these $30,000 to $60,000 engagements, while these competing bigger firms were getting paid 6 figures or more for arguably less. So the problem wasn't actually her service, it was how she was positioned. Now, clients saw her as really good, but not as a partner who could really lead a transformation. So what we did is we helped her and her team rebuild her offer around this one thing, which is her transformation. Not the deliverables, not the scope, but the outcome. And what happened then is that the same service, same scope, actually maybe even a little bit less, and she was able to close her next deal at over $100,000. And the interesting thing is this engagement was with an existing client she didn't think that would have paid anymore. But that one engagement generated more profit than any other engagement that they ever had had. And here's the thing is that when you do this, you don't have to justify prices. The positioning does the work before you ever get on the call. So I experienced the same thing in my last company. I had a marketing agency where we did branding and we did web design. And what ended up happening is that I got lopped into this category of just like this doer. So they'd have a scope they wanted me to do, and me and my team would go and do this scope. I had ideas for them, and they would say, okay, that's a good idea. We'll think about that. But ultimately, they just wanted me to check off the box, do the work that they came to me for. And ultimately, what ended up happening is that I stayed stuck at this level, and then I was not able to get out of that level. So I continued to stay stuck at this place where I wasn't getting paid enough to be able to actually hire more of the really good team members to be able to remove me out of the day-to-day. And as a result, I ended up not being able to take maternity leave. I was 9 months pregnant and I couldn't get out of these projects in order to really get to this next level. So this company that I had built to create freedom for me actually really became more of a prison, and I had to actually shut the business down so I could take my maternity leave. It was the right thing to do, and I learned a lot from that. While it was really frustrating to be stuck at that place where I was wanting to deliver the tier 2 and tier 1 type of work. I wanted to have my website just chock full of all these great case studies, but I didn't know how to do that because clients were seeing me at this level and they were coming to me with this kind of work, and I did not know how to get out of this trap. So in my last company, I ran into the same problem here, where the only way I was able to grow is by clients coming to me and giving me more scope. They'd have more things for me to do. And ultimately, as I was trying to remove myself from this, I was trying to hire more people to do this work, I wasn't able to do this. And one of the reasons why is that it wasn't based upon an outcome. So I wasn't able to get paid enough for me to actually be able to sustainably and profitably remove myself from this with someone that was good enough that I could actually rely on. So what ended up happening is that I had a team, but I couldn't count on them. And the entire business just fell apart just days before my maternity leave that I was supposed to be taking. So So I ended up having to shut my business down because I did not have this worked out. I was being seen as this tier 3. I wanted to deliver tier 2 work and tier 1 work, but the problem is that my clients just wouldn't give me the budget. They didn't take my ideas. And I just was so busy just delivering all the work that I couldn't actually just see outside of this box that I had created for myself. There's really this prison. And ultimately, that experience is what has led me to spending, well over a decade figuring this out, because this is the core foundational piece that you need to have in place to be able to have a scalable and sustainable service firm. So what happens when you don't do this? Well, you grow by doing more clients, more projects, more people. Your revenue goes up, but your profits don't. This is what I was finding myself in. And the challenge is it gets even worse because your costs are going up, but what clients are willing to pay on average isn't. And in some industries, the perceived value of services have actually gone down. So you're caught in this squeeze where costs continue to rise and the perceived value is falling. And you're working harder and harder to just stay in the same place. So one of our clients, Jerry, his agency was stuck at $1 million. They were doing good work, but they were spread across a dozen different industries. They had no real market focus and no clear positioning. So what ended up happening is it made Jerry very buried in the day-to-day because everything was so custom in the business. So the first thing that we did was we helped him hire a manager to free up the capacity. And then we looked at where he could get the best client results with the right kind of clients. And it turned out that elder care was the sweet spot for him. So we built his entire positioning around that. One industry, one transformation, and one type of client. And what happened is they stopped chasing after, any type of client that needed their type of work. And then they started attracting the exact kind of clients who needed what they did best. And Jerry and his team went from charging a few $1,000s to closing 6- and 7-figure clients. And they went from being stagnant at $1 million to going to $3 million in just 3 years. And at the same time, tripling their net profits. And now he's on track for a $10 million company. And what's fun about this too is they've launched a podcast, they built a referral network, and they really built an entire ecosystem that fed their business as them becoming the very best tier 1 firm in their industry. Now, you don't have to be at the place where Jerry is at to be able to actually benefit from this different approach. The thing is that this didn't happen just because he raised his prices. It happened because he raised his standards. He defined the transformation that he wanted to be known for, and he built his business around delivering it consistently, and the pricing followed. So how do you actually do this? Well, you stop trying to justify your prices in sales conversations, and you start building a brand that does the justifying for you. Your messaging should speak directly to the painful problem your best clients have. Not a generic, we help companies grow, but the specific, expensive problem that you can solve better than anyone. Your case studies should sound exactly like your profit sweet spot client. They should be about the stories of their transformation, where they started, what changed, and what's possible now, not just some logos and testimonials. Your thought leadership should demonstrate that you understand their world. You understand the excruciating pain that keeps them up at night, not just, hey, these are my deliverables. And when you do this right, your prospects stop asking for your menu and they start hoping that they qualify. They feel understood and they want what you're offering even before you even pitch it. And this isn't really about pricing. Pricing is just a symptom. This is about building a company that you're proud of. One where you're doing your very best work with the right clients, under the right conditions, where you can actually train your team to deliver at the very highest level because you've defined what that actually looks like, where you're not consistently fighting for the budget you need to do your best work or justifying your value because your brand already communicates it. Only about 20% of companies in any market operate at tier 1 and tier 2. And they're the ones that generate 80% of the profits in the industry. And I want you to ask yourself, are you building towards that? If you've ever tasted what the tier 1 feels like, even just once, you know it's possible. You've had that one client, that project, that moment where everything clicked. So if you're sitting here thinking, I know I'm doing tier 1 work, but I'm getting paid like tier 3, well, that's exactly the problem that we help firms solve. This is not just a pricing problem. It's making everything in your business harder. And if you're doing tier 1 work, but you're getting paid like tier 3, that gap is costing you time. It's costing you margin and leverage, and it's not scalable. Would you like to see what's holding you back from pricing at that tier 1 or tier 2? Well, we do a short clarity call to identify exactly where your positioning is breaking down and what it would take to fix it so that you can scale impact and profits. Use the link below to apply for a free session. Now, the goal is just to make that standard and not just an exception. And that starts with defining the transformation that you want to create, getting clear on who you can create it for, and then building your business around delivering it every single time. That's how you scale.